Hello, parents. I'm going to be talking to you today about how to facilitate language development in your young children and the impact that this has on children's literacy skills. These ideas are typically centered around children ages birth to 3 years old. Have you ever wondered how children learn to talk exactly like we do, even though you haven't taught them anything about sounds or rules in the English language? The reason that children know how to speak English is because that's what they hear all around them from you. Because you are speaking to them, they learn the rules of the language and they learn core vocabulary that is often heard around them in their daily lives. The more that you speak and provide language enriching activities in everyday life, the more complex language skills your children will be able to use. Having good language skills not only helps children with speaking, but it also has great impact on children's literacy skills, meaning their reading and writing. Language and literacy skills are very connected, and in order to have good literacy skills, language skills must be well grounded. There are many ways to improve a child's language skills through everyday activities. There are also very simple ways to practice early literacy skills that parents can do with children of any age. Throughout this short video, I will inform you about the importance of language development and how to facilitate this development in fun, everyday activities. I will explain the relationship between language and literacy skills and offer some ideas of early intervention that can really help your child when it comes time for them to begin reading and writing on their own. We will also discuss the American Speech Language Hearing Association, ASHA's view on the topic of language and literacy development and why they believe it is so crucial to develop early language and literacy skills from a young age. As I stated before, there are many activities used in everyday life that can facilitate language in your child. First and foremost, always talk to your child. When a child is young, such as under 2 years of age, you should be using self talk often. Self talk is simply talking about what you're doing, what you're eating, etc. An example of self talk would be, I see a kitty. The kitty is sleeping. As you can see here, all I'm really doing is narrating what I'm seeing. Another language enhancing technique is using parallel talk with your child. When you use self talk, you are talking about what you're doing. When you use parallel talk, you are referring to what your child is doing. An example of this would be, wow, you're eating your strawberries. Good job eating your strawberries. If your child isn't old enough to be saying full words, but they are babbling, a great way for you to communicate with them is to repeat what they are babbling. If they say ma 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 ma, you can repeat that back to them. This is such a simple repetition task, and although you may not realize it, you are teaching your child turn-taking conversational skills. When children are older, you can find ways to facilitate language in almost everything you do. If you're going for a walk with your child, point out common things you always see outside, such as trees, leaves, and squirrels. Even if your child is not yet speaking, one day they might point to a tree looking for you to say the word tree. This is their way of communicating with you. A 15-month-old child can usually only produce around 10 words. However, they understand around 50 words. Always try and be conscientious of this and respond to your child's attempt at communication. One of the most important things that you can do in order to facilitate language in your child is to read to them. Books teach a child so many important things, such as vocabulary sounds, rhyming, and the idea of print awareness, meaning that lines in a book translate into meaningful words. Themed books are also a fun way to introduce new vocabulary that may be less frequently used in day-to-day activities, such as words that have to do with holidays. I'll use the example of the word pumpkin. A child may not know what a pumpkin is or where it's found, but if you found a story about a child going to a pumpkin patch, picking out a pumpkin, and then going home and carving it, a child may have a much better understanding of the word and contexts it may be found in. You could take this language development a step further and actually go on a trip with your child to the pumpkin patch and use self-talk and parallel talk to describe what you're doing and seeing. Another idea to solidify this concept even more would be to discuss with your child how what you're doing is just like what the child in the book did. Wow, you picked out a big pumpkin just like Johnny did when he went to the pumpkin patch in the story. The American Speech Hearing Association website states that the experiences with talking and listening gained during the preschool period prepare children to learn to read and write during the early elementary school years. Many times, people don't realize how connected language and literacy are, but without good language skills, literacy is most likely going to be very hard for children to learn. I started to touch on the idea of how important reading is to language and literacy earlier, but now I'm going to get into it a little more. Although children usually cannot read at 3 years of age and under, there are many things that you can do to help children gain pre literacy skills during this time. The most important thing to do is to read to your child at least once a day. Most people usually do this before bed. Try and find books that have a lot of rhyming and alliteration in them, such as Dr. Seuss books. I also think it's important to let your child read along with you, or even let them read to you if they have that desire. If you have trouble keeping a child's attention while you read, Asha suggests that you point to words and pictures while you're reading. Another reason why reading is so important is because it teaches young children the idea of phonemic awareness, which is the act of recognizing that words are made up from specific sounds. This will help children with writing and spelling in the future. Asha states that children who perform well on sound awareness tasks become successful readers and writers, while children who struggle with such tasks often do not. Although your child probably isn't old enough to write, encourage them to draw and then let them tell you about what they drew. This is great practice for when they will one day write. Overall, language and literacy skills are very important to develop at a young age because a child will use the knowledge of language that they already possess, such as their vocabulary, print awareness, and sound awareness, to build on those when it comes time to learn how to read and write.